ask a couple. All right. Thanks everyone for joining the Future Proof podcast. I am joined here with Anders. He is the Chief Product Officer and co-founder of EcoSec Works. They are a AI-driven powered SecOps and DataOps automation company. They're focused on optimizing EV charging infrastructure. So thank you for joining me today.
Well, thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
Glad to be here.
Why don't you go into a little bit about, kind of the origin story and why you guys decided to start EcoSec?
Well, both Tom Caldwell and myself, we used to work together for about 11 years alongside at Cisco Systems. Back in the day, we've both been in tech for forever here in California, and he was a typical, very techie guy, director of engineering, was a very product management type person, so director of product management. We were in network management and network security. When we left Cisco around 2011, we went sort of separate paths. Tom spent, I would say, following years kicking off 3 different cybersecurity startups, all which have exits, and one of them was actually acquired back into Cisco eventually. I spent time increasingly in IoT and renewable energy, solar, wind, smart buildings, and EV charging, quite frankly, smart home energy systems, things like that, for about 8 years. And then I dove into cybersecurity with a company called Illumio, which is a market leader in microsegmentation and zero trust. Spent 4 years in there. Tom actually did the opposite. After his cybersecurity run, he worked 5 years with a EV infrastructure management company called Techniche. Not per se in cybersecurity, but in sort of operational automation. And I think about a year ago, we just stumbled upon each other again. We've always sort of remained in contact a bit, but we started to talk about what we've been doing, shared some data points, and kind of asked each other what we wanted to do next. There was a few couple of things, and sort of the combination of the security space and also EV charging space that sort of stood out as being unresolved issues. And at the same time, you see this projected extreme hockey stick growth in adoption of EV vehicles out there, and therefore the need for EV charging as well. Not just at home, but at public places, along major highway corridors, and wherever you're going to go, shopping, park your car during work, whatever. And those are growing up. And there's now companies they go by the sort of category of charge point operators. And it can be anything from a municipality, a city, to actually a sort of commercial charge point, or Tesla's been doing this as well. So those kind of we found some pain points there in terms of things that should be resolved for this to actually scale up and do well. So that's when we decided to, after some homework, to actually kick off this company called EcoSec Works from scratch. So we're the co-founders, and it's really an early stage startup.
Interesting. So I know we talked about it, at the beginning of the podcast or before we started recording, but really what did you see in this space that really decided you guys to, start this company? What was like the lack of, what was going on there that, you found an entrance?
Well, first of all, I think anybody who is a serious electrical vehicle user have been for some time, and they travel and drive on the roads, really on road trips a bit longer with these vehicles, rather than just spending time around their immediate neighborhood. They would recognize and agree that it's not a very, very good experience to be able to get to charge your vehicle efficiently with any guarantee of success at all. There's a widespread industry problem around anything between 8% and up to 30% downtime of these EV chargers out there that are sort of publicly available, and you can actually either they're down or there's frequent issues. I think one of the most frequent issues is actually failed credit card transactions. So these are all constitutes IP networked environments. Everything is connected over the wire, so to speak, and then Bluetooth into the car. And there's simply just not good tools at all to actually make sure that these things are operational and working. There's nothing even close to the equivalent that's been in place for example, a carrier network, or what you experience with, home entertainment and things like this anymore at all, or even this kind of session that we're having here is high quality. These things simply don't work so too often. So that's one piece. And the other piece is basically, well, if it's a network, it's certainly prone to cyber attacks. And that has actually been not even an afterthought so far. None of the security companies, for example, that I or Tom work for, even targeted charge point operators as potential customers. So we didn't build tools for them They don't have the cyber knowledge. They don't have this expertise to use the kind of tools and sort of methods that sort of banks and insurance firms have had for years now. So they really don't know how to deal with it even. This is now about sort of electrical equipment, about the microgrid. There are solar panels involved. There's battery backup storage involved more than often in these charging hubs, and they're also connected to the overall grid. So it's electricity, it's current, and if you can manipulate that, you can do pretty disastrous things. Not just a ransomware attack, you can actually destroy things and cause some really bad damages. So the industry is aware. It's understanding that this is a common issue, and it's becoming increasingly interesting to sort of see if one can do something about that to protect it.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I was looking through the website trying to, kind of get a grasp around it. And my mind didn't even go to, it went to cybersecurity attacks and maybe like, entering it, maybe like shutting it down, but I didn't even think about changing the voltage or, doing anything like, to kind of manipulate and destroy something. So yeah, that's super important. So what is the toughest part right now of you guys building this company in such a technical, fast-moving space? What bottlenecks are you guys having?
So I would say the interest, number one, which is not a bottleneck, it's a really good thing. I think the world sort of, for most part, agrees, especially maybe in places like Europe and Asia, that EV growth is here to sort of, the adoption of EV vehicles is here to stay and actually here to grow tremendously quickly. And we also see market numbers on that. So that's great. So the interest from charge point operators, I mean, our target customers and our actually investors is actually very, very, very high. So we get with frequent interviews and pitches and things like this, and actually probes in terms of can we invest in you? Can we get the pilot going? We have signed MOUs with customers already. We have engagements with about, I would say, Rolodex of maybe 15 to 20 of them that want to deploy this when we're actually done. But I would say at the same time, it doesn't help at all that we have an administration who very explicitly state that climate change is a sort of a hoax. And any of these kind of efforts around renewables, wind, or anything like this is kind of just a waste of time. And we should go back to actually other more traditional means of energy production. That has, I would say, not stopped things, but it certainly creates caution in the marketplace. I mean, importantly in the US, along with that, several different very important funds from the government has also been put on hold, like NEVI funding, things like this. So it's expensive today to actually even invest in a EV charging infrastructure operation as a business. It is much harder today, so people are holding off. So that's where we are, unfortunately.
I mean, your target client, I guess it's a little bit more broad. So it's anybody that's doing, or trying to, start one of these EV stations. Now, are they really like commoditized or, held by just one entity? Like obviously Tesla has their own, or like certain car companies, are they kind of like enterprised out where you can actually, start a business doing EV charging?
It is a very, I would say, what do you call it, diverse market right now. Obviously, people know about Tesla, a company called ChargePoint, which is very dominant here in the US, it still exists. But today, EV charging in America, whatnot, that is the same kind of big firms in Canada, to some degree in Europe, but it's become much more diverse. So Tesla has actually stopped investing in their EV charging infrastructure operation business and basically laid off all people working on new development and R&Ds like in summer 24. So they're gone from this space. They're still actually maintaining their charging stations. They're high quality, but also very, very expensive, and they don't seem to have an intent to go forward. So clearly losing market share. ChargePoint, the company itself, is actually one of those that had those kind of disastrous numbers, up 30% downtime. So people stopped using them. So that's opened up for a whole bunch of, I would say, mid-tier, mid-sized, newer companies like L3 Energy, M&8, EVgo. If you drive around with your EV around town, for example, where you live, you're probably going to see a whole bunch of these kind of different newer brand names of EV charging stations. Maybe a smaller bunch of them, 5, 6 or so, but they're new. They're sort of there. So they are mushrooming up now. But they've been dependent on these kind of funds too as well to get going. But still, they're targeting to grow up and things like this. But they're in effect startups too.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, that's good to know. So, kind of going back to, I know you guys haven't been around for, too long. and you guys have already a nice portfolio of customers underneath your belt. Do you have like a story of something maybe interesting that you guys have done, help prevent, or, done for these clients? That's something to talk about, like interesting.
So we have one customer example that actually happens to be the same one that has signed the MOU and is going to roll this out across 130 charging sites across the US. So they had been looking for the last couple of years, in fact, at potential tools or vendors they could purchase, acquire to sort of stitch together their own charging operations management center, if you like, including using things from major vendors in workflow integrations like ServiceNow and things like this. Those are very expensive and on steroids, and you actually have to add your own R&D to them. And they all have a really hard time stitching together. Well, there's hardware equipment, there's electrical equipment, as I mentioned before, there's solar and battery, there's the EV charger, machinery itself. There's electrical sort of connections for sure. But then there's also digital network, right? And everything is happening, actually, real internet devices sitting out there, and this all needs to communicate. They had a very hard time to even figure out, how do we get something together that integrates where we can see everything in a single pane of glass? And be told what is actually the root cause of something not functioning correctly. You don't actually really know today with existing tools, without something like what we're aiming to put to market, what is actually causing an outage? Is it a network issue, or is it actually that the EV charger here in this case needs to get the firmware upgrade, or is it just broken physically, or what's actually going on? Now, solar and battery systems also have their separate sort of management consoles. You really don't know how this is actually lining with other stuff, if it's ready or it's down. So these guys ended up putting people physically on trucks, driving out and taking a look. That's just so Stone Age. It's almost unbelievable. That's actually what they did. So first time we came along and talked about this idea that we could sort of provide something which is, by the way, combining the operational piece, one single pane of glass, with security built in, not like just something we strap on after the fact. Like they'll go that. Well, that's precisely what we need. So they jumped on it right away.
Interesting. All right. So a little bit, let's talk about a little industry insight, because I think it's fascinating. Obviously, this whole IT cybersecurity with AI, and then also now going into, the revolution of, EV cars and them getting way more popular. Even charging networks are growing exponentially, but they're also vulnerable. What is the biggest security blind spot that you see right now with these newer companies, and what are they facing?
So, they don't have the cyber expertise or know-how that the traditional, I would say, IT based operational businesses have, like banks, insurance firms, airlines, whatnot. Even the utility companies have. If you think about it, the charge point operator of a mid-tier size, like an M8 or an EVgo or something like this, they may have something to 10 to 15 people in total operating this whole infrastructure, and they have to do everything from the hardware to the EV charging to the electricity equipment to the network equipment to actually security as well. So they really don't have time, by the way, even if they had the knowledge to really know what to do with this from a security angle. They don't have time to actually deal with this if this issue is popping up, and sort of sit and look around for them and search for them and do things like, it's normal in a bank, specific people in SecOps teams that do threat hunting, for example. You see an anomaly, there's no indication of what it actually is, but it does look weird, and somebody gets on their own to sort of see where somebody came in and then attract them back in terms of network traffic, kind of being affected and so on. That's not going to happen in this sort of EV charging infrastructure ever. So we were thinking you can use AI in the back end, not as a little cool, sexy feature on the screen to talk to you in text only, but actually something that automates things in the back end to actually find what is it? Is it an anomaly? What kind of anomaly might it be? How often has it occurred? Does it look like it's serious? And this thing learns over time too. And you have to deal with this thing called false positives too in this kind of world, where you can get a lot of alarms, an indication of something is wrong, and it's actually totally normal simply because somebody actually built out the infrastructure itself. It's supposed now to work that way. That's not a problem. This component can actually help you understand and automate sort of what you need to worry about and not. And so the goal is to make, I would say, operations and, making sure that uptime is guaranteed and actually secure very easy, and get the human out of this as much as possible to deal with all the nitty-gritty details.
Got it. What do you see? Do you see anything kind of like changing in this like space for kind of what the chargers do and their abilities and kind of what they offer until like the customer is sitting there? Because my mind kind of races where, obviously you're sitting in your car, you have the screen, you have, the ability to do things there. Is there any kind of other services that they're going to maybe potentially offer in the future that you guys are thinking of kind of, down the road thinking of protecting?
I mean, there's a lot of thoughts around the industry, around if we're gonna, for example, the scenario, you're gonna drive somewhere, charge your vehicle anyway, it might take anything between half an hour if it's a fast charger to get a decent charge for the distance you need, or might take longer if you're dealing with a slow charger. You're gonna spend time there. What would you do anyway? I know Tesla's building out those first kind of instances of, what would you call it? Tesla classic diner kind of thing, the next generation where you can actually eat old American food and things like that, spend time. There's a whole bunch of other ideas for these charge point operators where they're sort of thinking about, that actually brings you into a scenario where building companies potentially become sort of the customer as well. That sort of integrates EV charging into their new, I would say, next generation kind of shopping centers or whatever, think grocery stores and whatnot that you can do, spend time there, entertainment or whatever. Those might be interesting come into the picture. But I think the other obvious one, which is going to be interesting to see how it sort of works out, is this sort of autonomous vehicle part of EVs, electrical vehicles when we get there. And it's not only personal vehicles, it's also trucking. There's companies like Aurora, for example, in the US are building out this steroids and already proof of concepting, autonomous trucking going on recently. So that's just around the corner. One needs to figure out a good way to actually have that kind of charging instances and sort of occurrences be automated as well, and without the human involved eventually. Maybe that's not the first thing we're doing, but I think that's where it needs to go. So this is going to become almost like a process where there's no human involved at all.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I mean, I went to Arizona not too long ago and was inside one of those. I forget exactly what it was called, but it was a fully autonomous like taxi or and an Uber car. It was pretty interesting. Yeah, I guess they're going to have some type of infrastructure, especially if those go like long distances or cross country, or like you said, the truckers. They're definitely going to need some type of like solution for that. So yeah, some things you never think about. So I know that you mentioned that you had a lot of history and experience in kind of energy systems in your past. Maybe not so much this current company, but how do you see AI and automation reshaping how we protect and manage critical energy systems in the next 5 years?
So I think it's a number one, I think it has an enormous potential. As I said, not just doing things that are very visible to a sort of typical consumer, customer, but actually from an infrastructure management and sort of dealing with so-called what I call back-end issues and just integrate things more efficiently, getting sort of the human operations center guide engineer out of the picture more and more and making his or her life much easier, providing recommendations and sort of saying what's wrong versus what is actually not a problem. You get them out of this unnecessary sifting through tons of data all the time daily, which they do still today. I don't think that is sort of a renewable energy or EV charging issue, by the way. I think that's something that can be done in general, also in the more traditional digital space where I come from in network management with large networks and things like this and security even. But I think that has a lot of promise. Now, it's going to take some time before users out there get comfortable with sort of trusting full automation and AI doing this for them for sort of more, I would say, mission critical purposes. Because it's getting to be about things that if they break and there's mistakes made, things can get pretty serious and really affecting major operation and businesses. And we know from, for example, my experience with banks and insurance firms that any question around potentially having the software malfunction, causing a break in operations, they cause that massive outage, right? So that's the fear that people will have initially to trust automation or even software. They've sort of already come from that land of suspicion. And if you talk about AI for mission critical operations and affecting businesses, but also maybe even things that can actually be dangerous, then it's going to take some time for people to be comfortable. But I think it's the same kind of we've seen this picture before anyway. 20 years ago, if you talk to any customer that I had back in Cisco about, yeah, we're going to move data center assets in something called the cloud, and we're going to manage it from there, and you're going to use it too. They told me there's just no way we're even ever going to see that, Anders. Forget about that. You're stupid. To today, everybody's there. So it just took it a few years.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy where things have came even over the last like 3 to 4 years. I can't even imagine the next like 10 to 20. So yeah. So what really excites you most about EcoSec Works and the entire EV security industry and where you guys are headed?
I think that it can be, so my little bit personal secret, I would say hope or the light in the tunnel I see that is even more interesting potentially than just dealing with one sort of specific energy vertical like this is that one can potentially start to walk the path of actually automating very crucial functions needed for operations and also cybersecurity defense, and actually making this a much more bulletproof world for us all anyway. And I think it's a good potential place to start because the know-how is not there, the time to deal with the details is not there, and we have sort of come to that stage, I think, where things needs to just function and work and need to be secured. And nobody wants to make a huge difference between, oh, it's working or is it secure anymore? Those are not two different topics at some point here soon. There's going to have to be taken for granted that this is also protected, right? That is not something that you can sort of purchase differently or have a different staff for or something like this. It's going to take some time for the industry in general to sort of, go there. Because if you talk to like a Citibank or something and they're staffing SecOps, they're never going to trust a piece of software more than themselves, they think. But at some point in time, they're going to have to start to.
Yeah. Well, interesting.
Otherwise, we won't be able to scale. So, and I think AI is here to maybe help that.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Well, thank you so much, Anders, for joining me today. It was a pleasure speaking with you. Real quick, so if there is an EV operator out there listening, how can they get in touch with you to maybe talk about your guys' services, or if anybody's even thinking about maybe starting up an EV operating company?
Well, yes, visit EcoSecWorks.ai and start from there and see what we're doing. And you can book a demo from that. Also get in touch with me and Tom and the staff too. So
I'll put the information below as well inside of the podcast. But yeah, thank you so much for joining me. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, pleasure here too. All right, take care. Have a good day. Cheers.